This is CBC Vancouver News.
Feels good to be able to still rise up from what had happened and celebrate with each other.
Thousands gather for the Pinoy Festival as BC's Filipino community reflects on the Lapu-Lapu Day tragedy and tries to rebuild. Also,
it's not a letter the government sent. It's a pressure campaign from Airbnb to get rid of the short-term rental rules because in the end, they want to maximize their profits.
the province is pushing back after Airbnb says thousands of BC reservations are at risk of being canceled due to problems with the registration process. Hello, I'm Janella Hamilton. Thousands of people filled Swangard Stadium in Burnaby for the third annual Pinoy Festival. This year's event comes with added significance, taking place 7 weeks after the deadly Lapu-Lapu Day rampage in East Vancouver. BC's premier calling today's festival a symbol of resilience of the Filipino community. Michelle Morton reports.
Pinoy Festival organizers say, in light of the Lapu-Lapu tragedy several weeks ago, this year's theme is We Rise.
We wanted to be able to giving honor to the incident and then also give them memories that we celebrate their life.
11 people were killed and more than 20 injured after an SUV drove into the crowd at the Lapu-Lapu Day block party on April 26th. In response to the tragedy, the province appointed a former Chief Justice to review festival safety measures to help organizers of future events.
For this event, we provided additional resources to the organizers to be able to ensure they had the level of security they felt they needed to come together and be able to celebrate. But for the long term, we need to know that people have the resources and the support around the level of security that they require.
Some vendors who were at the Lapu-Lapu Festival say it's important for them to be here to move forward with the community.
We are offering this public art installation to co-create with everyone and to, rebuild and heal from what happened to our community.
Today's theme, ladies and gentlemen, is a powerful one. We rise.
We're definitely here to remember those who are lost and those affected, but it feels good to be able to still rise up from what had happened and celebrate with each other.
It's a time for us to face our fears and just be out here and celebrate with my co-Filipinos and also with other cultures.
It feels great. Yeah, there's a lot of security and stuff. It feels really safe. Yeah, no, it's good. Great food.
While they work to uplift community spirit, Pinoy Festival organizers say there will be more events like this one to bring British Columbians together. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Burnaby.
Northern health officials have identified multiple cases of measles in the small BC community of 101 since late last month. Officials say the first case in the community about 90 kilometers northwest of Fort St. John appears to be travel-related, but now they believe the disease is circulating locally. Measles is highly infectious and can lead to serious complications. The health authority says if you think you have measles, stay home and self-isolate for at least 4 days after the rash first appears. Staying in BC's northeast, where there is some optimism on the fire front, officials say rain and cooler conditions have been providing some relief. There are 3 fires of note burning in BC. The Kiskana River wildfire has burned down a few homes in the Kelly Lake area. Yesterday, however, the Peace River Regional District called down some of the evacuation orders related to the blaze. Meanwhile, 3 evacuation alerts have been rescinded for the Pocket Knife Creek wildfire northwest of Fort St. John. And elsewhere in the province, the Dryden Creek wildfire near Squamish is now being held. Officials say the fire appears to have stabilized after help from cool, cloudy weather conditions, but a drying trend is set to start again tomorrow. Short-term rental platform Airbnb says thousands of reservations in BC are at risk of being cancelled because of problems with the registration process. The company is accusing the province of rushing out regulations as it cracked down on the industry. But as Tanushi Bhatnagar reports, BC's housing minister says dozens of other short-term rental platforms have managed to register their hosts.
Despite Airbnb hosts in BC complying with the province's short-term rental rules, some hosts tell CBC News guests are receiving emails from the platform saying their reservation will need to be cancelled due to local regulations if they have a booking on or after June 23rd. And at the bottom of the email, contact details of the government for grievances, creating confusion among hosts and clients.
It's not a letter the government sent. It's a pressure campaign from Airbnb to get rid of the short-term rental rules because in the end, they want to maximize their profits.
Under BC's new rules, sites like Airbnb, Vrbo, and Bookings.com are required to cancel bookings and remove hosts who fail to register with the province by June 23rd. In a statement, Airbnb says it is only informing guests with bookings at listings that do not currently pass verification, and that thousands of reservations in BC are at risk of being cancelled.
Unfortunately, the government was quite delayed in launching the system and failed to provide the required time to fully test it. There's significant issues in verifying hosts and their listings.
Hosts need to fill out a form on the government's website with the property details. They'll receive a registration number or exemption that they can submit to their rental platform. The government says all platforms except Airbnb has been able to comply with the new registration process. But the company claims the government's to blame.
Hosts are being rejected due to tiny discrepancies like typos or formatting errors. The government's determined to push forward in requiring platforms to cancel bookings on listings that are encountering these challenges.
The Housing Ministry says the deadline to register was May 1st, and hosts still have more than a week to work out the discrepancies.
And we were able to address all of those issues, and now it's on the platforms to make sure that the systems align. We're having very little issues with VRBO, very few issues with majority of the platforms.
An advocate says the bureaucratic back and forth is cause for concern.
It really causes uncertainty for travelers. And I think that's what's the scariest thing. You have a lot of people that are, putting a lot of their time and energy and money into either hosting or being guests.
The province says it hopes Airbnb will better support its hosts in verifying the listings instead of cancelling their bookings before the deadline. Tanushi Bhatnagar, CBC News, Vancouver.
A Vancouver Island municipality is calling for changes to BC's building code to encourage the installation of more elevators in new buildings. As Saurabh Sandhu reports, the idea is garnering support from accessibility advocates.
Accessibility advocate Susan Bance says wheelchair users like herself depend on elevators for their day-to-day needs.
When I used to live in a condo myself, for 24 units, and there was only one elevator. And so you would be waiting if it was down for maintenance. You'd be waiting if it was used for move-out purposes. It'd be shut down for those times for certain people.
Ben says she is encouraged to see a resolution being adopted by the Saanich District Council that aims to improve accessibility and housing affordability in the province by following European elevator standards.
North American elevators are incredibly expensive to build. And as a result, you see fewer elevators being built in low and mid-rise buildings, and that is an accessibility issue. Or if they are built, they're way more expensive, and then as a result, you are seeing increased housing costs.
The district says the resolution is based off a recent study from the Center for Building, which found elevators in North America and their parts are up to 3 times more expensive than in Europe, and buildings here have significantly fewer elevators.
It's one of the biggest single line items in the whole building, and so it's significant, and that also, doesn't even take into account the maintenance on that elevator.
The resolution recommends BC's building code be changed to permit small elevators in low-rise buildings with 3 stories or fewer, where currently no elevators would be installed. It also proposes increasing the number of elevators in mid-rise buildings by incorporating smaller elevators.
I see a lot of promise going forward with this, but I just think it should always be kept in mind that you have to balance, a smaller elevator with you don't want to reduce the overall capacity while you do that.
The resolution will be presented at the Union of BC Municipalities annual convention in September, where elected officials will discuss vote on the proposal before sending it to the province for review.
It may be a good fit. It may actually address cost pressures that we're seeing from many builds, and it may also help us diversify away from the U.S., which I think is needed given the challenges we have now.
Kalun says if the UBCM passes the motion, the province would be ready to consider it, but only after public consultation. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Surrey.
The 83-year-old wooden pier at Jericho Beach is now opened after extensive repair and restoration work. The pier was heavily damaged by strong winds and high tides in November 2021 and January 2022. In 2023, the Vancouver Park Board staff released a report recommending the removal of the pier, but the elected Park Board voted instead to conduct a like-for-like repair on the pier. Park Board commissioners cited its nostalgic value in approving the repair, but say they were not ruling out an eventual complete rebuild of the pier. The Park Board says a new float would be installed at the pier by the end of June. The Abbotsford Canucks secured a 4-3 double overtime victory over the Charlotte Checkers in Game 1 of the Calder Cup Finals last night.
Gates, and Klimovich has it. Looking backdoor, takes a shot and he scores! Let's get out of here! Janella Klimovich just called Game 1!
After falling behind 3-1, the Canucks rallied in the third period to tie the game and ultimately win in the second overtime. Game 2 is set for Sunday. Puck drops at 1 p.m. Pacific. Still ahead, Minnesota's manhunt. Authorities identify a suspect wanted in connection to a politically motivated shooting that left one state lawmaker dead and another wounded. That's next. Stay with us. A major manhunt is underway in Minnesota after a gunman shot 2 Democratic lawmakers and their spouses. 2 of the victims have died. The CBC's Chris Reyes has more.
This is a dark day today for Minnesota and for democracy, but we will not allow fear or violence to define who we are or how we move forward.
A quiet suburb of Minnesota woke up to a manhunt after a suspect gunned down 2 politicians and their spouses. Killed in the attack were State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband. Also shot and injured, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz said he lost dear friends.
Speaker Hortman was someone who served the people of Minnesota with grace, compassion, humor, and a sense of service.
Police say the attack happened in the early hours of Saturday when they were called to the home of one of the senators. It was there that they encountered an individual impersonating a police officer. There was an exchange of fire, and then the suspect got away. Police are now looking for 57-year-old Vance Luther Bolter, the CEO of a security services company based in Congo, according to his social media profile. Police had this warning for residents as they asked for help in tracking him down.
You should consider him armed and dangerous, and you should call 911 immediately with the information.
The suspect left behind a vehicle. Police say they've recovered a manifesto that includes a list of other political figures, several AK-style rifles, and No Kings flyers referring to protests against the Trump administration happening nationwide. Governor Walz called the attacks an assassination.
This was an act of targeted political violence. Peaceful discourse is the foundation of our democracy. We don't settle our differences with violence or at gunpoint.
In a statement, U.S. President Donald Trump said the FBI is on the case and called for anyone involved to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Police say they can't reveal much about the possible motive or relationship between the suspect and the victims at this time. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Rallies against U.S. President Donald Trump were held across the U.S. and around the world today, including in Toronto and here in Vancouver. They coincided with Trump's birthday and a huge military parade in Washington. Sasha Petrusik reports.
Washington is putting on quite the parade, quite the show. It's supposed to mark the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, with 7,000 marching troops, tanks, and fighter jets, as well as parachutists descending on the crowd. Also, it happens to be Donald Trump's 79th birthday. He's excited.
And I think it's going to be great. We're going to celebrate our country for a change.
I'm hoping to see the airplanes, the helicopters, the military guys. That's what America's about, right?
But President Trump's been the best president that this country's ever had. And it's just like I said, this parade is long overdue.
In Washington today, there's plenty of security. Almost 30 kilometers of fencing around the White House, concrete barriers on many streets downtown, hundreds of police officers, as well as snipers on rooftops. But it may yet rain on Donald Trump's parade. That's the weather forecast. Also, the event has triggered protests across the U.S.
We don't want a king. Let freedom ring.
People are out in some 2,000 cities and towns today. There's criticism that Trump is militarizing this country by sending in almost 5,000 troops to California against the wishes of local officials, including Governor Gavin Newsom.
He's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past.
Others are joining the so-called No Kings protest because they don't like the powers Trump has given himself, far beyond those of an elected president, they say. And they don't like the way it looks, more like something that belongs in Moscow or Beijing, they say.
Well, I mean, America's about democracy. What we're seeing right now is not democracy. It's about one person, their ego, their agenda. It's not really about, the land of the free, home of the brave. It's about one person trying to be a king.
So today, for some Americans, it's a celebration of what Trump has brought. For others, it's a reason to protest what they fear from him. Sasha Petrusek, CBC News, Washington.
WestJet says it's investigating a cybersecurity incident involving its internal systems and app. Some users were experiencing limited access as a result of it. In an online post, WestJet says it is working with law enforcement and Transport Canada to investigate the matter and limit impacts. It says it's working to protect customer and employee data and is also urging caution when sharing personal information. At least 270 bodies have now been recovered after Thursday's Air India crash. 241 people on board were killed. Only one passenger survived. More people died who were in the doomed airliner's path on the ground, and it's expected searchers will find even more dead. Investigators have recovered the flight data recorder, a key piece of evidence. It will provide details on engine and control settings, along with cockpit conversations. Salima Shivji brings us the latest.
Specialized teams are on the ground here for this investigation as it ramps up. Experts, not just from the Indian side, which is leading the investigation, but of course from the United Kingdom and the United States as well, and teams from Boeing too, basically to sift through and dig through the debris in targeted areas. The debris left behind when the Boeing plane came crashing down less than a minute after taking off from the nearby airport in this densely populated residential area. Now, the investigation is targeting certain areas. There's heavy machinery being used as well because they're also picking up and removing parts of the plane's wreckage, important pieces of the plane that have been sitting on top of crushed buildings for 2 days now. So that is part of the process today. India's civil aviation minister is talking about the important key element of the investigation right now, and that is that one of the black boxes, the flight data recorder on the plane, is being analyzed already. And he, of course, as many experts have pointed out, is saying that that is a crucial part of this investigation to really find out what went wrong in those moments right before the plane came crashing down. So that is a big step in the investigation. There is also news that the Boeing 787 fleet here in India is being inspected, really scrutinized for any sort of issues. Every single plane operating here is going to be inspected for safety measures. The minister says that there are about 34 planes and that 8 inspections have already been completed and that more will be happening as soon as possible to ensure safety in terms of this specific type of plane. Of course, the investigation is going to take time. Also taking time is the identification of all of the victims here. So many, the toll is now at more than 270, but we will not know the exact number until DNA testing and samples are released and analyzed appropriately from the family members of the victims. And so families who are grieving are needing to wait in that process, really an agonizing wait for so many who are trying to start the grieving process, but they still are waiting for the remains of their loved ones. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Ahmedabad, India.
Here is a live shot of Burrard Inlet facing the North Shore on a relatively clear night. I'll have your full forecast next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC inbox.
Check out CBC News BC, your local streaming channel. It's a free ad-supported TV channel available 24/7, delivering breaking news, weather updates, daily headlines, and sharing stories that matter to British Columbians. Stream your favorite CBC programs like The Early Edition, BC Today, and On the Coast. CBC News BC is available on connected TV platforms.
All right, it is time now to take a peek at our weather for the days ahead. Let's begin with the current temperatures around the province tonight. 9 in Fort St. John, rain in Prince George with a low of 10 overnight. Kelowna, you're seeing risks of thunderstorms and a low of 11 overnight. And in Victoria and Tofino, clear with a low of 9. Heading into tomorrow, that risk of thunderstorms pretty widespread across the province, including places like Fort St. John, Prince George, Williams Lake, and Kamloops is all going to see a risk of thunderstorms for tomorrow, but much clearer in places like Kelowna with a high of 27 for tomorrow. And on the island, Victoria, a mix of sun and clouds and an expected high of 21 for tomorrow. A little cooler in Tofino with a high of 15. In Metro Vancouver, our Sunday is going to be a mix of sun and clouds and a high of 19. A bit of a mixed bag forecast for the days ahead. That sun will stick around for Monday, but we should see some rain by Tuesday. That is your late news for this Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. For news at any hour, you can always head to our website at cbc.ca/BC. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.